Everybody, and welcome back. We are back with Dr. Nekeshia Hammond, and I am Jacqueline King. As you know, we are doing the mental health series on BWE, and we really have covered a lot of topics. This is our last session. Of course, Dr. Hammond will be with us again because she is a contributor for BWE. But just in case you missed it, we've been talking about mental illness or mental wellness, and our children, we like to call it mental wellness. And so if you have a child and you want to know about what you can do, maybe you're seeing some signs, some symptoms that your child might have an issue with not being mentally healthy, then this is the show for you. So we want to say welcome back, Dr. Hammond, and how are you doing?
Thank you. I am doing wonderful. How are you?
I am well. Thank you for asking, and we are just so excited that you have joined us. And all of our shows are available. You can go back and listen to all of them because we have shared a great deal of information around mental illness and children and people. So I do have some things that I wanted to discuss tonight. I looked up an article and it says which mental illnesses are most common in children. So what I found, it says children can suffer from the following mental illnesses: anxiety disorders. Children with anxiety disorders respond to certain things or situations with fear and dread, as well as with physical signs of anxiety or nervousness, such as rapid heartbeat and sweating. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I actually, that's one of my subspecialties is anxiety with children. And it really, as you mentioned, Jackie, it comes in a lot of different forms. So a lot of times when we think of anxiety, we might think of test anxiety, which is definitely one form of anxiety. But also there's some children that are just very anxious about school in general. That could be due to their peers and they have more of a social anxiety. Or it could be due to just the environment of school and the change from going from home to school, let's say. Or if they're homeschooled, it could be dealing with the schoolwork itself. But anxiety really, it comes from a lot of different sources. Sometimes I've seen children in traumatic situations. So maybe they have witnessed something in their lives or on TV, or been a part of a natural disaster, or there's something traumatic that's happening in the home, and all of a sudden they start to develop a lot of anxiety symptoms, and they're very nervous, understandably. And then there's other children that the anxiety really, really gets the best of them. And we hear it a lot. I've heard the term, oh, he or she is so OCD, thrown around a lot, but it's actually, it can be a very, very debilitating condition. That type of anxiety, because really and truly there are some children that are spending so much time worrying and maybe doing behaviors to really protect themselves from germs or protect themselves for things that are really illogical, but they don't see it that way. And it takes a lot of time and it really affects their functioning. But there's a lot of different anxiety disorders, but then there's also children that are sort of worrywart or worry a lot, but they don't fall into the disorder category.
Wow. So what is it that you would do for a child that's suffering with anxiety?
So a lot of times we really have to start with looking at their triggers. So sometimes parents, they know what makes the child anxious, and sometimes we're not so sure. So I actually remember, several cases, but one case in particular where the child, let's say for dinner time, they really, really needed to sit in a certain seat at the table. And it was very anxiety provoking to sit anywhere else. So one of the things in that situation is slowly, but really to work on what we call cognitive flexibility, or basically helping them to change their thinking, helping them not to do things so routinely that it's so distressing when they have to change and they have to adapt to something new. Another thing, again, is to look at their triggers. So the trigger may be meeting someone new, and they're so anxious. I see that quite a bit with kids. they're so anxious to be in a new, unfamiliar setting. So they may be a social butterfly at home. They may be comfortable around their cousins and their brothers, sisters, or their family members, but then going into a new situation on a playground or in school or some extracurricular activity, they're very anxious. So in that case, sometimes it really helps to help the child deal with those social situations and to teach them at home social skills. But also, if you find at home that it's just too difficult, you can Google social skills groups that are near you for the same age group. So let's say the child's 8 years old, then you'd want to look for a same age to your social skills group to really help them practice those skills that are going to be really important socially and emotionally for them going forward. Wow. And so you also recommend treatment if necessary?
Yeah, definitely. So social skills group is one part of it, but again, there's a lot of different reasons for anxiety. So another piece is, again, definitely start from home, work on techniques that you find, maybe some self-help books or, something, reputable things that you found through an internet search. But when you really find that their functioning is impacted, meaning academically things are changing, socially things are different, or they're just very depressed from the anxiety or something of that sort, then you really want to reach out to a mental health professional and to further explore and assess what is going on with them and their triggers, and then to really start to get them counseling and get them the help that they need. Because you can work on social skills, let's say, or anxiety management groups, or you can do it individually, or in some more severe cases, the child may need medication to manage that anxiety.
Mm-hmm. Okay. The next one is pervasive development disorders. It says children with these disorders are confused in their thinking and generally have problems understanding the world around them. Can you talk about that?
Right. So when we hear of PDD or pervasive developmental disorder, we're really looking at the realm of autism spectrum disorders, let's say, or there's different types of communication disorders or social disorders. And basically, I know that many people have heard the term autism. There used to be the term Asperger's. We don't necessarily have that by definition anymore. We have it under a different umbrella. But nonetheless, there are children that really struggle socially, but there's different components to that as well. So they may have had very significant delays in walking or talking or toilet training or other types of developmental milestones that further impact them as far as communication. Sometimes what I've seen too, and maybe someone listening, your child may experience this, is like a sensory processing type of issue where sounds are just too loud, or even touch, like tags are very bothersome, or clothing, they hurt. Loud sounds, the feelings of different things. So in that case, a lot of times we want to look at basically a sensory processing disorder evaluation to see if that's an issue. And then communication-wise, if you see that the child is really struggling with pronunciation or maybe a delay in speaking at all, then you want to definitely look into a speech language pathologist. So a lot of times when I know we're talking specifically about mental health, but it really encompasses so many other things. So that's why it's imperative to really go to a professional who can say, you know what, you also need an evaluation from a neurologist or from a speech pathologist or whomever else, because you want to make sure that you're treating everything comprehensively to make sure that your child gets what they need.
Wow. There's so many different things that could be happening. The next one is eating disorders. It involves intense emotions and attitudes as well as unusual behaviors associated with weight and or food. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, when I was on internship, 10 years or so ago, at what used to be called Miami Children's Hospital, the medical hospital for children and teens, it was really interesting because I was on, one of my rotations was on an eating disorder unit.
And what people really don't understand, I think, a lot of times with eating disorders is at the severe end, there are children and teens that are hospitalized because it is so difficult for them to eat. And really and truly, it's not really about the eating. It's about so much more going on with them and their self-esteem and their self-image. And there could be anxiety and depression and a lot of other factors. But it's just really, really important to pay attention. Some of the warning signs are to really pay attention to the things that your child is saying. So if all of a sudden they start to really compare their thighs and their arms and different parts of their body, they're always in the mirror. Sometimes you can see that they're trying to really cut back on different types of foods, not eating the same type of foods as they used to. Or, in some cases, we always think of starving, that children with eating disorders are starving themselves. And some children are, but other children are eating, but they're in the bathroom often because sometimes they're vomiting or they're using laxatives or they're exercising excessively to really try to digest the food and make sure that they don't gain any fat. So there's a lot of warning signs, again, to going to the pediatrician, and even a lot of times that's how some of my patients in the past have learned about an eating disorder, to say, wait a second, this child just lost 15 pounds in 2 weeks, which we know is a lot of weight in a short amount of time. There's binge eating. So there's a lot of different symptoms to this, but the most important thing is not only do you need to be under the care of a dietitian, but you need to be under the care of a mental health professional because, again, and I've seen it personally, and it's very, very hard to see, and I don't wish that on anyone, but at the severe end, there is a feeding tube that some children and teens need because they are refusing to eat, and that the weight issue is so bad, and it can be life-threatening in severe cases. So it's something to really take seriously, and again, to work, it's a team effort with a pediatrician, with a dietitian, with a mental health professional, and any other specialists that are recommended.
A feeding tube, really?
I have seen that. Yes, it's so hard. It's so hard, and it's so devastating. I've seen just amazing families and what they have gone through because it is to the point where the child or teen, in my case, it's all about teens, they absolutely refuse to eat according to what their dietitian wanted them to try to regain the weight. It's so sad. It's so hard on a family to really see that. But that is the case for many eating disorder patients.
And is that, have you seen it where it is a result of bullying, saying that you're too fat, and that's why they do that?
Yeah, many times. Many times I have seen the start, and actually it's sad because it really starts early, just planting a seed, which is why it's a whole other topic, but bullying prevention is so important because these are seeds sometimes that kids unknowingly or hopefully unknowingly plant when they're 8 years old, 9 years old, 10 years old, to basically victim. And some of these children, they remember that, and it weighs on them. So it's something that they heard in 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade, and then by 6th, 7th, 8th grade, it's just too much. And they really want to, in an unhealthy way, change their image of themselves. And again, could start an eating disorder. It has a lot of different causes, but that is, definitely one path, unfortunately, to get there.
Well, I'm just gonna stay on the topic, but I know when I was in school, we used to have phys ed. I understand they don't have that anymore, and I know that. I live in North Carolina, and North Carolina was a lot different from New Jersey, and I've seen such obese children here. Are we feeding our kids to death? It's just bad.
Yeah, I think, somewhere along the line, just the whole idea of nutrition just changed. I really think as our society, we got so fast-paced that it's so easy to just go through a drive-through and just pick up some food, even with adults, but even with kids, they're so busy they have so much going on. They're in a lot of rigorous programs. Myself, even in high school, was insane. I think high school was harder than college for me because I was in an international baccalaureate program, and it's just the amount of pressure is insane, and there's so much pressure on education and pressure with the extracurriculars and all these other things. And sometimes if you don't have a parent or caregiver that's stressing the proper nutrition, you can just consume, a lot of garbage, frankly. And like you said, you see the obesity rates rising because of that.
So one problem leads to another and another and another. So as parents, it is our responsibility to make sure that our kids are picking healthy choices. That's one of the things I liked about First Lady Obama. Her mission was, to get healthy, get fit with the children, and all the stuff she did with the exercise and to make it fun. I think that we have to do it. It's no longer an option because we're killing our kids. That's really what we're doing.
And it really is. It's very true. And start early. So if you're listening to this, I know I have a 4-year-old son at home that would eat whatever he wanted to if we let him. But start early. So if you have a preschool or elementary school, that is the perfect time to teach them about nutrition. They really look, at that point anyways, they look up to you to, what to eat and what's healthy and all that. They may not want to eat all their vegetables, but more or less try to feed them the healthy options, like you said. It makes a world of difference. It really takes them on a positive path as far as making good nutritional choices. And then when they are in the teen years and when they're 16, 17, you're not really controlling so much what they're eating out when they're not around you, then they can make those healthy choices. But it really has to start early.
I'm going to get back to my list, but this is burning on my mind, so I just want to bring it up. I just recently found out that OCD is a mental disorder. I never knew. Can you, first of all, explain what that is and how it affects you?
Yes. So OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, is under the umbrella for anxiety. So as I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of different types of anxiety disorders, but it falls under that category. And basically what it is that a person has two things. One is obsessive thinking, and not just you're thinking a lot about work or I don't know, something else that's going on in your life, but it's really, really to the point where it is taking up a lot of your time, where it prevents you from being productive at work, or it prevents you from being productive as a parent or in whatever other facet of your life, combined with, oftentimes, with compulsions. So compulsions are the behaviors. So, and like I said, unfortunately with media, sometimes they make light of OCD. I think it's actually very serious, but they make light of it. But you may have seen some shows where someone is checking the doors a lot of times to make sure it's locked, or washing their hands excessively, or doing some other type of behavior. But what happens with OCD in particular, and why it's so debilitating with kids in particular as well, is there are certain rituals that take place because the anxiety is so severe. And what happens is it actually turns into a vicious cycle because it's a high amount of anxiety. And let's say it is about germs. So it's a high amount of anxiety about getting sick. So you wash your hands so frequently, but then you become anxious again. So you need to wash your hands. And it gets to the point where, and I actually have seen for some children that their hands are bleeding, or they have a lot of scars, because it's so debilitating, because they're so afraid. I just can think of, little girls that were so afraid of getting cancer, or so afraid of getting sick from something else. And there was no risk or anything like that. So it's a very, oftentimes, illogical, type of thinking. But again, that's what anxiety does. And when you do those types of behaviors, it makes you feel better temporarily, but in the end, you're avoiding the bigger issue, which leads to more anxiety. So it's a very, like I said, it's a very difficult disorder. But the good news about it is that it is something, with depression and anxiety, they're both two disorders that are so heavily researched. So actually, there's a lot of interventions that that are in place that can be really helpful, provided families go to a mental health professional and really get help that they need.
Wow. Okay. All right. We're going to go back to our list. Affective mood disorder. These disorders involve persistent feelings of sadness and or rapidly changing moods.
Yeah. So basically, like you mentioned, mood disorder. So again, just like with anxiety, I think we hear very much in general the terms depression, anxiety, but there's a lot of different types of mood disorders. So a lot of people have heard depression or clinical depression, which it comes in a lot of different forms, but more or less we all sort of know what depression is. Sad mood. For children, actually, it's more of an agitated mood sometimes. You see a lot more irritability or a lot more anger, maybe not wanting to do schoolwork or angry with their friends or their teachers or their caregivers. But also, as in addition to depression, there's also bipolar disorder, which is another disorder that a lot of people throw around, like he or she is so bipolar. But really, that also can be a very debilitating and real condition, because in extreme cases, sometimes when a person enters into a manic episode, they can actually end up hospitalized, because in a manic episode, a lot of times people think, which it is, an elevated mood, but it's so elevated sometimes and so high that the person may pretty much think they're invincible and can go into episodes where there's reckless behavior or maybe excessive spending, reckless driving, those sorts of things, because there's such a grandiose way of thinking and very elevated, combined with the depressive symptoms as well. So that can really shift some. And there's a lot of other different type of mood disorders. But again, the major thing for parents to understand is there are a lot of warning signs for this. And as I mentioned, in particular with children and teens, it looks a lot more like irritability. So I've had a lot of parents that will say, well, I've never seen him or her, sad, or it's not like they're staying in bed and not doing anything, but they're very, very agitated by everything that I say, and it's hard to get a word in, and it's hard for them to, hard to communicate with them. And those can be signs, along with, again, grades declining in school, or some type of behavior problem they're acting out that's happening in school, or them saying they want to hurt themselves or kill themselves, or you could see that they are sad. So there's a lot of different criteria when it comes to mood disorders.
One of the things that is very alarming to me is because I have a nonprofit for homeless female veterans, is PTSD, but a lot of people think that it's only associated with veterans, which we know that it's not. Can you talk about that again? I know we talked about it before. What triggers that, and what are the symptoms?
Yeah, and that is absolutely right. Unfortunately, PTSD, or as you mentioned, post-traumatic stress disorder, is not oftentimes really widely understood or really recognized so much with children. We tend to think of this condition of only with the veterans, which it does happen with veterans, but it also happens with children. And one of the triggers for that is really something that is so traumatic to them. They may have witnessed something. They may have witnessed, we've heard in the news that children are witnessing other people being shot, or witnessing a fatal accident, or being involved in a fatal accident where they're a survivor, but other people aren't, or really experiencing a very traumatic event. It can be abuse, it could be a natural disaster, it can be a lot of different types of traumatic events, frankly, or even being in a very traumatic situation or household can trigger it. And some of the warning signs for PTSD are a couple things. One, sometimes children start to try to avoid places or experiences because it's like they're reliving the experience, and they start to have flashbacks. A lot of times, it's interesting because the research shows a lot of times children will be in school and they will have flashbacks for traumatic events, and they will shut down. And because sometimes the teacher's not aware of what's going on, we'll just think, well, they're acting out, but really they're having flashbacks, they're having previous memories. And in some cases, children will act out because it will feel like they are really in that traumatic situation that has happened to them before. We call it a dissociative symptoms, but basically it'll feel like it's real right there in the moment when they're not in that situation anymore. They can also have nightmares. So if you're hearing your child have just repeated nightmares, not a once in a while nightmare, but repeated nightmares about something traumatic that's happened to them, or on the opposite end, they can be very numb. So it's something that has been very traumatic for them, and they're just numb to emotion, numb to feelings. And that's a way of trying to protect themselves, but it's definitely, again, with any of these symptoms that you're hearing tonight, it's something that do not wait, and please reach out to a mental health professional and make sure that you take the preventative route instead of waiting until children are basically more harmed. Because the longer you wait with most of these disorders, the worse it can get, as opposed to getting help earlier. But those are some of the some of the symptoms of PTSD, and there's many more, but some of the major ones that tend to pop up.
Something, as you talk, just different things just pop in my head. And I know that human trafficking is a big thing now. And a lot of our kids are running away and getting caught up into that. Do you have you seen a rise in people that are coming to you that have gone through those experiences?
So actually, I work with a couple of different charities that deal specifically with that issue. It is so awful. I believe last I checked for Florida, we're number 3 in the nation, which is so really sickening, honestly, when it comes to human sex trafficking. And it's so disheartening because, as you mentioned, it's the way that the perpetrators more or less are getting children and teens into these situations is that they're basically showing a lot of love and showing I can buy you Coach purses and these type of sunglasses and these type of material things, and really pulling them into a lifestyle, which, I mean, we know as adults is totally inaccurate, but to a young, vulnerable teenager with sometimes damaged self-esteem and really not feeling loved wherever they're at home or wherever else, and for the predators basically to be preying on victims is just awful. So yeah, I have worked with some agencies, and one in particular, here in the Tampa Bay area is it's called Joshua House, which is a residential program that works specifically with children that have been abused, neglected, or abandoned, and they have worked with countless victims of human sex trafficking. But really, what they found as one of the, one of the warning signs, or one of the causes, sometimes, I don't want to say the word cause, but contributable factors, is that a child is really in a vulnerable place. So that's why it's so imperative that we really make sure that our children feel loved in some way, and really that they have the resources and the support around them. And I think I've said this, 18 times over the last couple of weeks with this series, but if not you as the parent or the caregiver, you're saying, I work 2-3 jobs or whatever the case may be, then make sure that someone is in that child's life that is supportive and is a good role model for them. So again, if it's the teacher, a coach, a neighbor, a coworker, a family friend, whomever that you trust, a church member, a place of worship, someone in your place of worship, whoever that you trust, that child needs a positive person in their life, because again, a lot of these victims of human sex trafficking have felt, when interviewed later, that nobody cared about them, that nobody wanted them, whether or not that was true. That's the way they felt, and they were, again, like I said, in really vulnerable situations. So it is imperative for all of us that work with children and that are parents and that are caregivers to make sure that children are getting what they need.
If a child gets out of that situation, how hard is it? Because I know people, adults and children who have have been trapped in religious cults and come out, and it's so damaging that it's almost irreversible, it seems.
Yeah, it takes a long time. There's a lot of different factors with that. One is at what age, the human sex trafficking started and for how long it was going on. And I know in some of the cases specifically that I've heard of with the, 8, 10 years, 6, 7, 8, 10 years. It's such a long time, like you said. I don't think anything is impossible, but I will say, just to be frank, that it does take a long time. It's a healing process. It's not an overnight 6-week therapy treatment by any means to reverse the damage, basically, that these perpetrators have done, because there's a lot of trust. And what's hard, too, in some cases with these victims is that they will still love the perpetrators because, again, it's such a horrible and distorted way that these perpetrators, what they've done to children and to teens. So they will still have feelings and will still care and that sort of thing. So it's really hard to, like you said, sort of reverse the thinking and to help them to have healthy relationships. But it's definitely not impossible, of course. And I have met survivors, too, like really strong, amazing survivors who are doing amazing and doing great. And again, and they have said, like, it took a lot of therapy, again, with their place of worship and therapy and counseling and just a really good support system for them to really get through. But it's not impossible, but.
Well, I really didn't plan on going the way that I'm going, really, but like as we talk, different things keep coming up in my mind. So I want to talk about the victim of domestic violence, because if you're, to me, it's hard to understand why anyone would stay in a situation like that. I know I've heard it over and over again. There is a reason, and they think differently. Do you counsel people like that, and do you recommend if they get out the situation that they get counseling?
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of great resources in the community for domestic violence, and I have seen in the past some children and teens that were in families where domestic violence was taking place. So I've definitely heard a lot more from their perspective. But I will say oftentimes, too, that it is, and I hear where you're coming from, because a lot of people have said that, too, like, I don't get it. Why does he or she, why don't they just leave? And what happens a lot of times, really, is that it's a safety issue in many cases. And it's funny, it was last year or so, I went to a conference and I did this really amazing experiential exercise about domestic violence. And the participants in the conference, we had a lot of different, scenarios to choose from. And we had a little bit of money, fake money, and a lot of different scenarios to choose from. But there was a point where in our exercise where it was, it's like, where do you go? Like, you're out of money, the shelter's closed, your family has abandoned you, or they don't believe you, you're worried about your kids, you have no job now, your significant other has threatened your child's safety and has threatened to pick them up from school or kill them, and things like that. There's a lot of things that I think we're not aware of necessarily, again, as far as a safety issue, and when it's safe to leave, really. And that's why, though, a lot of domestic violence programs and shelters and domestic abuse hotlines and things like that are a great resource, because they will help you. If you know that, well, it's hard to admit time, but if you know that you may be in that situation of domestic violence, you definitely should reach out to someone. There are professionals, like I said, out there that will help you with a safety plan of when to leave or not, and what to do about that situation, because it's really not as easy as people think. As you mentioned, to just up and leave. There's a lot of different factors that are usually in play at the time.
So you are saying that the children, if they do get out, they could be emotionally damaged, and they're going to need, and they will need professional help.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And a lot of times too, a lot of the resources specifically for domestic violence are wonderful, and they definitely, like I said, take that into account, and not just for the significant other or the partner in that situation that's experiencing the domestic violence, but also for the family members that are also affected. Because even if, I hate to say it like that, but even if you're not experiencing physical abuse as a child, to witness so much domestic violence is still damaging, or can be damaging as well. So children definitely need resources as well. And that is why those programs are really great, because they're there to help the entire family. I know, I met someone at another conference over in Orlando, and they have, everywhere, they have facilities, but they're basically like safe havens. So no one knows the location or anything like that. In those circumstances, to make sure, again, safety is number one. And they can definitely counsel you through for domestic violence. And for the children as well.
And if they don't get help, I have seen those children grow up and do the exact same thing. Is that statistically proven?
That is statistically true. That there is a greater risk of experiencing or being in a household with domestic violence. It obviously, definitely there's not a causal factor, so it doesn't cause someone later on to have those types of behaviors. But violence is a learned behavior, so that again does put the child at risk, especially with not getting help to really process and understand violence. And sometimes what happens, especially the young kids, is that they become very desensitized to violence, which becomes very scary because that becomes your norm. And so when you're at school, in elementary, middle, high school, or whatever age, and you are lashing out at others, that's sort of your norm, and it's not the norm. It is not normal for someone to hit you every day, or for you to see that every day. That's not normal, but it becomes the norm for those children. So absolutely, definitely we need to work on the interventions so that, like you said, there's to lessen the risk factors of having those behaviors in adulthood.
Are the schools, it seems like a lot, are the schools prepared to deal with all of this?
Honestly, I will say, in my experience, some schools are, and some schools absolutely not. I have been beside myself, just upset with, it's been funding issues or whatever you want to call it, and there are some schools that have such a lack of mental health support in very dire situations and desperately need more help. And then you have some schools that have more resources than they know what to do with, which is great, which is awesome. So really I've seen, throughout our district, we're one of the largest districts in the country, that it really depends on the school. And in my ideal world, I would love for every school to have the appropriate mental health resources. But I think that's something, that we in the community need to strive for, and you, wherever you may be watching this, need to advocate for in your own community, because it is so, so important to have the mental health support in school.
So in the inner cities, I don't mean to stay on this, but in the inner cities, they're just worried about the kids learning. And so now you have to add in this other factor. It's not happening, is it?
And frankly, those are some schools that I am referring to. And it doesn't seem, I don't know. I don't feel that it's fair, but that's another whole other soapbox. But really, you shouldn't be penalized because of where you live, and not to have the mental health resources just because you're in a school that happens to be in the inner city versus a school on the other side of town and is rated an A school. I've never really understood that personally, but nonetheless, that is the reality sometimes. And like I said, there are schools that I've been to where there's not even a counselor. And what do you mean you want the counselor at your school or a social worker or whatever? It's like pieces of the puzzle are missing. And then we wonder why the children are acting out and why they're getting into gangs and why their grades are horrendous. And it's like, well, because there's no mental health support. So we know the solution in the field. It's just going back, like you said, to the funding issue and quite frankly, to what is a priority in some of these schools. But I certainly don't feel that children should be penalized because they live in, depending on where they live and what school they go to. It really should not be like that.
So what if, I'm just saying, because you were part of the mental health fair that I just did, and we had 15 professionals in the mental health field, something like that. Wouldn't it be nice if these institutions, these organizations would say, okay, we're going to volunteer one person to go to the school once a month, once a week, once a whatever. Wouldn't that be awesome?
That would be so amazing. That would be so amazing and wonderful. And again, like you said, it really takes a team. It takes, number one, and most importantly with mental health, it takes for the community or that school to make mental health a priority, number one. And then once you say this is a priority, we have to have that here, then like you said, you can have that conversation and say, how are we going to do that? Okay, let's reach out to mental health counselors in the community and see. There's givenhour.org, and those people have heard of that. But we're plenty of mental health professionals throughout the country were donating an hour of their time here and there, which was adding up for veterans, let's say, or for military personnel. So it's the same concept, like you said, which would be brilliant and amazing, but it takes the first step is for the school to say, you know what, we need help. And I don't always see that happening because, again, if there's not a priority, there's so much focus on the academics. Not that academics aren't important, but you can't, it doesn't matter if the student has straight A's, if they cannot function in life and they're socially and emotionally, they're damaged. It's not going to be helpful. We can't just always focus on academics. We have to make sure that children are well. Like I said, mental wellness, you have to focus on that.
And it is, I know we're going to give you this last 15 minutes to share some information, but you're absolutely right. And, it just, it amazes me how, we don't take this as serious as we should. And then just about every week you're hearing about somebody shooting up somebody and the first thing they say, they weren't taking their meds. They had mental illness. That's the first thing you always hear. It's playing out over and over again. When will we as a country get it?
Exactly. There's just so much that's preventable, and that's the reality. You cannot prevent your child from, heaven forbid, an accident that happens or an injury or something, something that's happened. Like, we can't control that. But what we can control, what we can prevent is mental health conditions. We can prevent this. We can prevent bullying. We can prevent youth homicide. We can prevent children from making really, really not great decisions that they do or hurting themselves or dying by suicide. We can prevent these things. We're not going to, the stats are not going to go to zero, of course, but we can prevent, we can reduce so drastically. But again, as you mentioned, the priority, we have to make mental health a priority.
Well, I encourage everyone that's listening, everyone that will listen, get involved. Take this serious. Just because the government is not funding it doesn't mean we can't get it done. Mm-hmm. We can come together collectively and come up with solutions. And I'm going to give you this last 15 minutes. I know you want to share some information, and I do want to thank you. This has been the great 4 weeks of information. I mean, just you're amazing, and you have shared so much that can help people, not just in this country, because we're all over the world. We're in South Africa, Uganda, Indonesia, Nigeria, Kenya. So the information may be helpful anywhere and everywhere. So I thank you.
Yeah, and I thank you too for having this series and then for you really valuing mental health. I know how much you value it, and I'm so grateful, definitely to be here in this series, and so grateful that you've taken the time to make this a priority, especially Mental Health Awareness Month. So I really want to thank you as well.
Well, this isn't the end, because you'll be back. We'll be doing pockets of shows that we have to keep people reminded that this is a serious issue. So the floor is yours to share what you have.
Mm-hmm. All right, let me try to share my screen here. That's all. Okay, so hopefully you can see it. So a couple quick things. So I know that one of the things that I'd gotten questions about in my email was, where am I and where's my information, all that good stuff. So hammondpsychology.com. If you click on About Us, Dr. Hammond, you can learn more about me here. Here are all the links over here to my social media. I would love to connect with you on social media. I share literally daily tons of tips, resources. I really am an advocate getting the public education, getting the education to the public out there, because without the education, we can't change things. So this is my website, again, hammondpsychology.com. You can learn more about me here. And I also wanted to share with you the American Psychological Association. So it's apa.org, and you can go to Psychology Health Center here. Come up. There are all sorts of resources here. If you're an educator or a mental health professional or work in some area of mental health, here you can also, even over here, order free brochures. So there's plenty of information here, as I mentioned, in all sorts of different areas to get information regarding mental health. And so that's apa.org. And then lastly, so importantly, please share this website and this phone number, which is 1-800-273-TALK or 8255. This is the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. As we have seen, like you mentioned, Jackie, in the news, unfortunately, there are, I just heard of the 8-year-old that died by suicide, and there are so many younger children and teens dying by suicide, and this information really needs to get out there. Please share this number with your networks and with individuals in your life. It is, as it says, 24/7. It's free, confidential support. If you're in distress, if you're in crisis, call this line.
That's awesome, Dr. Hammond. This is completely awesome. I thank you so much. You have just been amazing, and you're beautiful. I always tell you that. But this is very much needed. We're going to keep the conversation going. I want to give a quick shout out to Tim Vincent and Ready for Change. I will be doing some work with them. They are a mental health organization here in Greensboro. They also do substance abuse. They are in Greensboro. If you're in the area, look them up. It's called Ready for Change. I went by and toured the facility. What an amazing facility they have, and a lot of programs. So I'll be doing, like I said, I'll be working with them. I have been sharing a lot of their information off of their fan page and their website locally. And Dr. Hammond, anything that you want, anything that you want me to share, all you have to do is tell me, because you know how I'm all over the place. But if there's something important that you want me to share, just shoot me a text, shoot me an email, whatever it is. to say that you need help. We did a show last night called The Talk, and Dr. Hammond, you would have been laughing at me. The girls, we do it every Tuesday, and we talked about the churches again, and the need to talk about mental health in the churches, and just like we did last week, I said some of the pastors need help, and they really do. That is got to be one of the most stressful. I don't know how he did it, but that's got to be one of the most stressful jobs, because people are pulling on you. If the money doesn't come in, you got to worry about paying the bills. Still, keep the lights on. That's a lot of stress, and then professional. So I'm saying, pastors, please don't think because God called you to preach that you cannot seek help, and you can. It's okay. So those are my words of encouragement. I want to thank everybody for tuning in, everyone who will tune in later. I ask that you share this broadcast. There's a share button at the bottom, and share it with as many people as you can. Let's make this go viral, because this information is needed by all people, but it's especially needed in the African American and the people of color in our communities, because we don't take it serious. Caucasians will go to the doctor. Let me tell you, they will go. I'm just saying I'm telling the truth. They will go to the doctor in a heartbeat, drop of a pen. So let's take care of our own. Let's take care of each other. Let's spread the word. And Ty, Cisco, thank you so much for joining. Please commit to sharing this all over your pages and your social media sites, LinkedIn, Twitter, all of them. You can tweet it out. You can follow Dr. Hammond on Twitter. And what's your handle, Dr. Hammond, again?
So Twitter is Dr_Hammond.
And she gives out great information. She has a Facebook page. Every now and then when I remember, I go and I share stuff off of there. But you can go there too. And keep up with her and like her page. Show her some love. She needs some hits over there. We try to share. it. But anyway, thank you again, Dr. Hammond. Thank you, everybody. And tomorrow night we will have the Michigan women will be ministering live on Facebook. God bless you. And until the next time, go in peace.